So today I was going through the archives of one of my favourite esoteric teachers, the man in the north, Hyperborean Knowledge, the Canadian druid, the warlock, the one in the snowy cabin. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy his videos. He's perhaps one of the first ones to get me into this scene, at least on YouTube. However, I have noticed a bit of a trend, especially in older videos, and that is the Egyptian slander. Now, just a small preface. What I'm about to present to you isn't an argument that the entire Egyptian civilization was Hyperborean, or even that the Hyperboreans were some progenitor to civilization in Egypt, perhaps teaching to different peoples. But I think there is strong evidence to suggest they were at least linked through trade. There was some cross-cultural inferences, or in even some instances, I think the early pharaohs or the later pharaohs had some Hyperborean stock to them. So let's get into some of the evidence, and we might as well start with the subject of my last video, the Nebra Sky Disk. Now, there is some glaring similarities between these ancient civilizations. If you look at the bottom of this grid, you can see in these hieroglyphics there is a depiction of Ra, Horus, on a solar ship with the Pleiades in the background. Again, another depiction from 4000 BC. Now compare that to the Sweden Bronze Age boat from 1700 BC. You can also see the Pleiades and likely another solar boat. And again, you see the sun ship on the Nebra disk itself. Now, to me, that does hint to some type of perhaps linked ancient religion or understanding or observation. I know there is a thing with the Pleiadian community that would point to this and be like, look, this is evidence that some of us are Pleiadians. The ships clearly represent interstellar travel. I don't know if I believe that, okay? I think it is somewhat metaphoric, and I do think there could be some type of ancient religious connection here. Maybe it's in the form of sun worship. Maybe there is some original progenitor god. Now, this is one of Hyperborean's main critiques of the Egyptian Hyperborean connection. He points out their truly disturbing gods like Anubis, Ra, and the other deities that are all these sort of man-beast hybrids. And clearly there is a massive distinction between Hyperborean gods like Sol and Thor and Odin, Wotan, or the other variations, that they're all humanoid and distinctively humanoid and have humanoid traits. Even the Mediterranean gods. And I know they are comparable, and I'm not trying to say that they're one-to-one, but the Mediterranean gods also embody incredibly human characteristics. Like, they make mistakes, they're not totally immortal, they're not omnipotent, they often lie and cheat and steal and sort of display human emotion in a way. Whereas the Egyptian gods, I'm not too sure on the ontology, but at least physically they represent what we would normally associate with demons and shapeshifters and skinwalkers. So there is a massive religious distinction. Now, there is a good amount of literature on this matter. One of my favorite volumes, it is an absolute behemoth. This thing was like 4,000 pages or something obscene in ebook format, is March of the Titans by Arthur Kemp. Now, hopefully I don't get a strike just from even mentioning this book. It does get into a little bit of wee-wazzery, if you're going to be super picky. A little bit Graham Hancocky, and I would agree with Hyperborean Knowledge in not planting our flag absolutely everywhere. The Aztecs don't need to be Hyperborean. Quetzalcoatl, honestly, he might have been Hyperborean. He could have been a Hyperborean traveler that told them these things, but we don't want to assume just because it's a cool culture that we had anything to do with it. And they had some absolutely barbaric practices, which is another thing Hyperborean points out. In Egypt, there was possibly this ritual sacrifice of red-haired people being burnt alive. Now, I don't know how true that is, because there is a good amount of evidence that Ramses III, I believe, was himself a ginger. Now, I don't think he'd be mass persecuting these people if he represented them. In fact, I think we will read the beginning of Arthur's chapter on Egypt and let him make the argument. Chapter 8, Nordic Desert Empire, Ancient Egypt. Although situated in North Africa, Egypt had been settled by three white groups prior to 3500 BC, namely Old European Mediterranean types, Proto-Nordics, and Nordic Indo-Europeans. With the later group penetrating the territory as part of the Great Wave of Indo-European invasions, which took place from 5600 BC onward. Living in a typical Neolithic settlements, this period of history is called the pre-dynastic period and is formally considered to have come to an end in 3100 BC. Below was a bone figure of a woman with blue eyes, pre-dynastic period. Okay, does have some European traits. A bone figure of a woman with blue eyes made from inset lapis lazuli from Upper Egypt, the early pre-dynastic period, Naquada 1, 4000 to 3600 BC. The ancient Egyptians often used lapis lazuli to illustrate eye color in their artworks and depictions. Very Hyperborean color choice. Sorry to my Celts. Ginger and other inhabitants of early Egypt. Racially speaking, the inhabitants of Egypt at this period in time were divided into three groups. Skeletal evidence from the grave sites showed that the original white Mediterraneans and Proto-Nordics were a majority in the area. A well-preserved body found in a sand grave in Egypt, dating from approximately 3300 BC, on display in the British Museum in London, was nicknamed Ginger because of his red hair, a trait only found in persons of European ancestry. I'm going to try and avoid saying that R word too much just for the YouTube censors. A ginger Nordic Egyptian circa 3300 BC. A well-preserved body from the pre-dynastic period in Egypt circa 3300 BC. Buried in a sand grave, the natural dryness of the surroundings kept the body preserved. His red hair has been so well preserved that he has been given the nickname Ginger at the British Museum, where he is kept on public display, alongside of Ginger's head showing the hair colouring. Now I wonder if that was one of those ritual sacrifices that Hyperborean Knowledge talks about. But I don't know. I don't know if they gave gifts to their gods. You can see the type of ornaments that the individual was buried with. Hopefully I don't have to blur that out. However, diggings also revealed a significant minority of Semitic Arabic peoples were living in the Nile Delta Valley alongside the Europeans and in the very far south in what later became southern Egypt and the Sudan. Lived in a large number of Nubians. I'm just going to skip a bit of this wording now. It might be a bit much for YouTube. The existence of these two groups within Egypt was to have a major impact on the history of their civilization. The present, yeah, okay. Alright, I think that'll do. Okay, so you can see the book gets into some territory that you may not all be interested in, but it does seem to make a case that there is some type of Hyperborean linkage to the area, even if it is somewhat thin evidence. Another interesting point is that there's been several artifacts found within the European continent. In the Balkans, there's been several artifacts found, such as scarabs. The same things were found in Rome. Now, of course, this could have been the Romans just collecting the stuff at a way later date and stashing it. But interestingly, there has been discoveries of the pigment Egyptian blue found in Britain. And this is much, much older. This is from sort of Bronze Age level sediments in old archaeological sites. And without a doubt, they have found stuff in the sort of Saxon age, although that's obviously way later. Now, look, I know the cultures are obviously vastly different, and I seriously agree with Hyperborean's take that we probably don't want to associate with these sort of androgynous, dysgenic sort of peoples like Tutankhamun, but look, there may be something to it. There may be something in ancient histories, Graham Hancock style, that we're not yet aware of. Maybe there is some type of link, and I can't rule out the ginger thing. Now, I'm not saying they look like this guy, although that would be absolutely hilarious, and it is fun to troll the wee Wazari. But I do seriously think there's a connection there, and I don't think we can rule it out. The strongest case that Hyperborean has against them having nothing to do with Hyperborea is the demonic-like gods. But who's to say they just went astray? Who's to say, like Arthur Kemp was arguing, perhaps one of these larger groups that were already inhabiting the area decided to kill off their more tall Nordic gods, like those of Hyperborea, and replace them with the Archoni, loosh farming, skinwalker, humanoid animal looking things, and take a different route. It's just food for thought. Anyway, here's a little bit of a funny story. If you've listened this far, you're obviously a schizo like us. I was watching a more recent Hyperborean Knowledge video the other day, and the topic of Christianity came up. And as soon as he mentioned that, I just had to think of Andrew Wilson. I thought, what would life be like if Andrew Wilson ruled the world under the Wilsonite theocracy? And I shit you not, I kid you not, a second later, Hyperborean responds and says, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to live under an Andrew Wilson theocracy. He would probably burn us at the stake. And I don't think he's wrong. So I'll give him that take there, that little psychic link. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. If you hated it, drop a hate comment. I'll just convert it straight to Vril. I'll transmute your hate comment into Eternal Vril. And I'll see you in the next video. Probably another video essay type, long form, deep dive into some artifacts. But we'll see. I just wanted to get this out while it's fresh in my head. Have a good one. Cheers.